May 31st to June 1st, Arm Sotheby's is auctioning the Dare to Dream collection. 60 million in cars, millions in shoes. So tell me a little bit more about it and how this collection came to be.
So I met Miles probably 15 years ago, and at the time he just had a small collection of cars that at the time he was very proud of, and just went to introduce myself to him, and slowly over the course of a few years, we built a relationship up, and he started becoming interested in, more important cars, more valuable cars. He had a real asphyxiation with Ralph Lauren and his collection, and his dream car at that time when he first started was buying a 300 SL Gullwing, and one that would replicate or be of the same colors as Ralph Lauren's car. That's kind of how it started, and just snowballed from there, from a 300 SL Gullwing and Roadster into vintage Ferraris, and then off he kind of went into the supercars and everything else.
So obviously a collection like this doesn't happen overnight. So what goes into assembling a collection like this? The time, the effort, what does it take?
His quality was paramount over anything else. I mean, price was almost secondary, and he found, myself and a couple other people that he trusted that, were going out and, finding the right things for him. So he would see different things that he had interest in, and then kind of come to me, and I would explain, you don't want to buy a 66 Shelby GT350, you want to buy a 65. They built less of them, and it kind of started from there with myself and a few other people kind of looking after him and showing him different cars. And he would also, randomly call up on a weekend and say, I want to buy a F40. Do you know of any good F40s out there? And, I'd go to work and kind of look around a little bit, and I'd present him a few different ones and kind of explain why this would be a good one versus that one. And he'd kind of make the decision on, okay, that's, I want the lower mileage one as an example. And, it kind of just took off from there.
So is he a car guy? Why did we start collecting all these cars, shoes, and everything else that's in the collection?
Yeah, I think he's definitely a car guy. He loves collecting. Everybody likes collecting something. For Miles, obviously, I'm sure there was stuff in his past, but, the passion around the cars kind of took off about 15 years ago. And I think about 5 years ago, he read an article on a bunch of running shoes coming up for sale, and kind of had interest, thinking, that would be a good thing to put within, at that time he was building a museum as well, that would be a good thing to kind of match up with the shoes. And he just kind of, when he thinks of something he wants to do, he kind of goes after it.
So obviously he started with, a smaller, $100,000 cars, and, built his way up over time. When you first started building this collection with him, did he think he was going to start collecting some heavy hitters like the big 5 Ferraris?
It was honestly just a coincidental meeting. He had a 62 Corvette getting some work done in our restoration shop at Chatham. So he really liked what he had, and I think it wasn't until I showed up, and yeah, they were nice cars. They weren't necessarily the caliber of, most of the things that we sell and other collections I've seen. And he had told me, I think once, that he was never going to spend over, it was $100,000, $200,000 on a car. And, within a year, it just kind of started with a $500,000 car, $900,000 car. And obviously a lot of these cars, when you purchase them, they, aren't worth what they are today. They were still obviously super significant, but, I think like anything, when you start collecting, you start opening your eyes to other things that are around, and all of a sudden realize that, that Aston Martin that, he loved, that was an 80 grand car, there's much more important things out there, and he had the means to go out and start, collecting more significant things. And I think once you kind of buy your first 500 grand car, and that makes it easier to buy the next one, or when you get into a 7-figure car, it becomes easier to kind of continue on, especially when you can see, these cars, most of the time hold their value. So it's not like buying a brand new car, it's going to be worth 40% less down the road. These are things that he saw as an investment, as well as, his passion for liking them and wanting to drive them and, have them within a building of his own.
Some of the highlight cars he's got, again, the big 5 Ferraris, was that something he set out to get, or was it, did it just come naturally, or how?
We never had the conversation about it. I think it just started with, I don't remember which one he purchased first. The F40, I remember him calling me on a weekend wanting to buy one, and I can't remember if that was the first one, but I think by that point, he had started going around and seeing other people's collections. He used to call me and say, I'm going to be in LA the end of the month, or there's some people I can go visit. So I would set up some visits with clients that I knew that had collections out there. I'm going to be in Miami, or I'm going to be in Dallas. And I think once he got exposed to what other people had, that kind of triggered him to go into what he has now. So I think it started with the F40, and obviously there's, a fair number of collectors out there that have the set of 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever it is. And I think once he got a couple of them, it was like, okay, I want to go out and get all of them. So they came over a probably 4 or 5 year period. He didn't just go out at once and, buy them all up. But yeah, some of them are, super important for what they are.
A lot of these cars have great stories too. Like there's the Simon Cowell Bugatti Veyron, or, the Ian Poulter 288 GTL, but there's also that Enzo. There's a story with it being the first one shown in North America.
Yeah, I didn't know it at the time. When we started going to catalog collection, we started researching all these cars, and I looked into it. And the interesting thing with that Enzo is it was the very first one shown in the United States. So it was at the Cavallino Ferrari meet at the Breakers in January of 2003 with its original owner. And then I think it went over to Arizona for a bit before it came up to Canada. But in terms of Enzos, I think that's a pretty important one, that it was the first one ever displayed in North America.
So yeah, this is obviously a huge collection, the biggest we've ever sold in Canada, and one of the biggest we've ever sold, period. So, tell me more about that. What goes into, organizing this and orchestrating an auction this big? For us, we've obviously sold dozens and dozens of collections over the years. And, I told him we could make this very turnkey for him, and he can be as involved as he wants or as least involved as he wants. He travels a lot. And, within a couple of weeks, we kind of had a deal, went down and visited his collection, and kind of off it went from there. It takes a giant team. It takes, most of our company at one time or another to be able to catalog a collection like this, photograph them, research them, write the descriptions, figure out estimates when it comes to the running shoes, to the memorabilia. It's not just a collection of 100 plus cars that we're selling. There's motorcycles, there's memorabilia, there's, autographed race suits, helmets. And then the running shoes was another aspect of it that, we've never had to deal with before. But, thankfully with our relationship with Sotheby's and the fact they've been in the business of selling running shoes for a number of years now, it made it even easier, for him to decide on us doing this, because we could handle every single piece of his entire collection. Yeah. You talked actually a little bit about the variety of the collection. So cars-wise, he doesn't just have, a bunch of supercars. He's got race cars, he's got bikes, he's got everything.
He's some of the important race cars he's got. He built a little garage setting within the museum that was dedicated specifically to that. And, a couple of the great NASCARs he has is he's got a Jimmy Johnson and Jeff Gordon car. The Jeff Gordon car, both of those were bought directly from Rick Hendricks, but the Gordon car was the car that Jeff Gordon won his 50th race with. So it's got some great pedigree. I think it was at Talladega, one of the super speedways. And the Jimmy Johnson car as well is one that he won, I think, 5 or 6 races in, ran 5 or 6 races in, and I believe he won the Budweiser shootout one year with it. But it came direct from Hendricks, so they're pretty special. I think when people start diving into looking at what he has to offer, like one of the very first pair of Nike Loom shoes, and there are a handful of them out there, but these are the only pair that have been determined that have been unworn. So they're the 250 GTO of running shoes in my mind. And a lot of the other cars he has too. I mean, not everything's a 7-figure car, but he went out and bought probably one of the best amphicars that I've ever seen before. It's restored to be able to go on the lawn at Pebble Beach. He's got a 65 Honda S600 convertible that was restored out in Victoria, BC. That's a piece of jewelry. He's a Messerschmitt that is also, another one that is just overly restored. So even on the cars that are 50 grand or 80 grand or 200 grand, they're, best of examples, when it comes to restoration quality and colors and pedigree. So he was very specific on, great quality with whatever price range he was looking at.
So when you walk in to the Dare to Dream collection, the centerpiece is a glass room with glass shelving of shoes scattered all throughout. Jordan 1s, 2s, 3s, all the way through. Tom Brady signed cleats, Ronaldo signed cleats, anything you could ask for. So tell me a little bit about that and how he got into the shoe collection, what sparked that idea.
You know, Miles reads a lot, and I remember him telling me the story, but on a Saturday morning, I can't remember which newspaper it was, if it was the Times or the Wall Street Journal, and there was an article in there of Sotheby's getting ready to sell this collection of running shoes. He read the entire article, it intrigued him. He kind of picked up the phone and was like, I have to have this, what can we do? And he ended up buying 99 of the 100 sets of, it's called the Ultimate Sneaker Collection, and it came out 5, 6, 7 years ago. And he called up Sotheby's and ended up buying 99 out of the 100 pairs in one fell swoop. They didn't go to auction. And then the pair he didn't buy were the moon shoes, and they went to auction. He ended up bidding on those and ended up getting those as well. But, you know, it's not just collecting the shoes, but, you know, you need a cool way to be able to display them. And, you know, when I walked in his collection, and this is a collection that has white floors, you have to put booties on. He doesn't want marks for running shoes on the floor. He's super, super particular about everything. And you walk over to an area and there's 2 glass rooms with these floating glass shelves, and the shoes are just displayed throughout this room. There's a boardroom table in the center of it. You know, it reminds me a little bit of, you know, kind of walking in an Apple store. I don't know where he got the idea from, but it's the attention to detail and the significance and cost it would have been to build the display is, you know, probably as significant as the shoes themselves. But I've never seen anything like it before.
Yeah, and I know these shoes are going towards a charitable aspect after the auction.
Yeah, so from the very beginning when he bought these shoes, you know, whenever the day came that he was going to sell them, and obviously for us doing it now, the proceeds from the running shoes are going to go to his own Dare to Dream Foundation that, you know, go towards supporting kids in different aspects, but 100% of the proceeds are going to charity for the running shoes. It's, you know, he's a very big philanthropist around Toronto, you know, among other places. So it's great to see he's, you know, kind of supporting his hometown.
You talked about, you know, just walking into the collection and the scale, how special it is, but what goes into the maintenance of a collection like that? Because I know he's probably got a pretty solid team behind him working to keep it maintained.
Yeah, to keep them running, to keep them clean, to keep, you know, it's one thing to buy the cars. It's another thing to like look after them and manage them and keep them as pristine as they are. And I think a lot of people don't understand. And we see it all the time. They start buying cars and they have 5 cars, 10 cars, 20 cars, 50 cars, and they don't realize all of a sudden that, you know, you can't maintain them all yourself anymore. So you got to start building a team around you. And, you know, it definitely is, you know, a job in itself for you know, an entire team just to manage everything. And, you know, that's something even Miles probably didn't realize, you know, early on, and it just kind of kept morphing into, you know, what it is now.
The cultural impact of a collection like this coming through auction, you know, people would say flooding the market per se, but, you know, all these sneakers, all these cars.
Anytime we come up with, especially these private collections and all the cars are being sold without reserve, you know, it's something that you don't see very often in the market. The fact that we're going to be selling $60+ million worth of cars and motorcycles and everything else without reserve, I mean, it'll definitely create a feeding frenzy because everybody is, you know, hoping that they might be able to get a deal on one of the cars. So it supercharges the interest and bidder activity that, you know, we're going to have on all of these. And, you know, the overall market is still really strong, and it really comes down to the best quality is what brings the best prices. And, you know, thankfully for Miles, he went out, he wasn't a price buyer, he was a quality buyer. So, you know, I think anybody purchasing a car out of the sale or any of the other items is going to know that it's, you know, the best of the best. When he bought the running shoe collection, that was Sotheby's first offering of getting into selling sneakers, right? There was always a market. It just wasn't very well known to the public, so to say. It was very specific to a small number of people. I never thought about collecting running shoes before, and Miles was very early on for initially buying that collection, and then saying to himself, I want to go out and continue to build this. This is fun. He loves collecting, but he was very early on, and I don't know if there's any other collections of the same size as his, but it'll be interesting to see that this market has evolved over the last 5, 6, 7 years, but to have this many come out on the market, all without reserve, I think we're going to see a lot more collectors jump in, and a lot more people, even myself, that I never thought about buying a pair of running shoes, but I might have to buy, a couple here. People will realize, oh, it's another, collectible item I can have, and they might look cool on the shelf in my office or whatever the case may be.
This is our first Canadian auction in well over a decade. So why are we choosing Toronto to do it all?
I talked about it with Miles, and where would the better market be? And obviously him being Canadian, us being 3 hours down the road, we had talked about for a number of years of doing significant sale in Canada, whether it be Toronto or Montreal or somewhere like that. And when this came up, and the fact that it's a museum, it's not a bunch of cars sitting in a warehouse, that I think there was no better place to do it than in the collection. And we're a Canadian founded company. I think it's super cool that one of the most important and valuable collections that our company's ever sold is 3 hours down the road. So it's because of us being Canadian.